Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Seth Williams. You're listening to the REtipster podcast. Today I'm talking with my good friend Jesse Marchand. So I first got connected with Jesse a couple years ago when we started the REtipster Facebook group. I'd always kind of seen him around different groups and that kind of thing, but about the time we did that, he just kindly reached out and said, "Hey, I'm happy to moderate your group if you want. I'm there all the time anyway." And I was like, "Yeah, I totally need help." He's been doing a great job just keeping all that neat and tidy and helping out with that. And as I've just sort of sat back and watched Jesse and seen his comments and questions and, just musings about the land business, I've realized this guy knows a lot of stuff and he's been doing this for a while and he has a lot of experience. And I figured, why not get this guy on a call and grill him about his experience, everything he knows, and we can try to extract some of the knowledge up in his noggin. And hopefully through this, we can all learn something. In fact, I know we're going to learn something. I've already talked to him a little bit before this conversation and lots of takeaways just right there. So I think this is going to be good. So Jesse, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Thanks, man. I'm so proud to be here, actually. I love it. This is my favorite land podcast. I'm not even joking. It is great. It's an honor. Thank you.
You say that to every podcast you go on?
Not yet. This is my first one.
Oh, sweet. So why don't we start back from square one? What is your story? When did you learn about the land business? What made you decide to give it a shot? Just help us figure out how you got into this.
Sure. So I used to live I grew up here in Massachusetts, and I used to live in Florida. I moved down there for a little while, about 10 years. And while I was there, I started to I always knew that real estate was a thing and a good way to make money, and that's how most rich people got rich. So I looked into flipping houses, and I did about 3 of those, but they were more like live in, fix up myself, sell, move, do it again, which obviously is not the most efficient way to do it. Then when I moved back to Massachusetts, I sold everything I had and I wanted to hit the ground running with this house flipping thing. So I was listening to podcasts and learning as much as I could. And it all became overwhelming really fast. I didn't love the idea of having to borrow $250,000 and pay it back within the next 3 months, or I was going to start hemorrhaging money. Around the same time, the house flipping podcast I was listening to had Mark Podolsky on talking about land flipping. I was like, oh, that's very interesting. So I started listening to his podcast, and then I'm pretty sure he had you on. And then, in all honesty, when I found you, I was just like, okay, you provided so much free information and easy to reach information that I went down that rabbit hole and never really came back up. So I kind of hit the ground running with that. I got a mentor, sort of a one-on-one that didn't exactly work out. Probably more, he was reluctant to teach me. He was like, it didn't really work out for me before. So it didn't really pan out. But I won't put that on him. So after that, I was kind of reluctant to get into coaching or get into another course. And from there, I was like, I'm just going to figure this out on my own. So I started learning and learning and learning and learning. Been doing that for going on 6 years now.
Wow. So you've been actively plugging away at this for 6 years. And how has the journey gone? Some people, I don't know, it seems like there's a few different paths people take. And this is obviously grouping people into very broad categories, but some people sort of start out and it just kind of flops, it just doesn't catch. Or maybe it does, but they just realize, I don't like the work. So they just kind of fizzle out and drop out. Other people do the total opposite, where they just jump into it huge, or they have a really massive early success, and it's just amazing. These are basically the success stories you hear about. But a lot of people kind of it's just kind of a slog, it works, and that's really appealing because a lot of things in life don't work. And that's enough to hook you and keep keeping the game, but it's not like you're making millions overnight. Like it's hard. It's very time
Right.
consuming. But I don't know. What does your story look like?
Yeah. So when I first started doing it, I was like, I learned so much, and kind of right off the bat, and I might have got kind of blind to the idea of it, but I was like, yeah, I'll just quit my job in like 2 years. I'll be done. I'm like, all my dreams will come true in 2 years. Every year since, I've like, all right, 2 more years. All right, next year, 2 more years. But in the beginning, I started off kind of slow. I was mailing about 1,000 or 1,500 a month, and it was going okay. And I was picking up deals here and there. Really, what it was I proved the concept. I wasn't making huge amounts of money, but I was proving it could be done. And that's really what kept me going. And I knew that the further I got, the better I would do. So, yeah, there was a long time where I was just slogging away, but I was taking little steps each time. And that's kept me going. I mean, in all honesty, I never lost money on a deal. The least amount I ever made, I think, was like $50. I was like, chalk it up to experience. But yeah, I kept plugging away.
So it's I think in our previous conversation, you had told me that for a while you felt like you were treading water, sort of like kind of like fitting into that middle category where probably a lot of people who stick with it, that's where they fall into, where it's just hard work and it's not, instant riches or anything like that. But I think I had seen in our Facebook group, I think it was this past year, I don't remember how long ago it was, but it sounded like you sort of turned a corner and like things got way better and started doing bigger deals and more volume and that kind of thing. And I'd love to understand, like, what was it before and what is it now and why? Like, what caused the change?
Right. Great question. So I think for those 5 years I was quote unquote treading water, I was thinking about this. I kept trying to get that financial gain. And for reasons we might go into a little bit later, I wasn't quite getting it. But I was able to barely keep my head above water. Every now and then I had to take a little bit out of my savings, not a lot, $15, $1,500 here, just to do like a transactional type close, or even borrow from my mom a little bit just to get the deal through. But I was basically keeping the business moving forward without really taking any financial gain. However, looking back now, I realized that my real gain was more experience, knowledge, and which has been and another one that's been a huge impact has been networking or just really making friends in this community. And I've noticed that has been a gigantic thing.
Yeah, that is a big deal.
Which we could talk about also. At one point, and so I was probably doing, honestly, like one deal every 2 or 3 months. I only had so much time based on my current lifestyle, so there was only so much I could do. So I would do probably only did like half a dozen deals a year. I think the best year I had was like 9 or 10, maybe 11 deals, which really is something, but not a lot. And then I kept telling my wife, I was like, I know I could do this. I know I can do it. I just have to get there. But I realized I also couldn't do it on my own, but I also couldn't afford a team at the time. Then I kind of struck gold with a deal that I did have to get a partner with, and I did have to split, but it netted me, I think, like about 28,000, which was awesome. And that was even a 50-50 split. And I still walked away with that. And then I had the money to really put in to this business. It wasn't just covering overhead. Now I could take that chunk and put it towards scaling the business. So I hired Clint Turner as a coach, and he basically, kind of walked me through it. Like, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. And one of the first things he told me was, you have to get off the phones. think if I can make a quick note about coaching, I think one of the things that a great coach will do is they will tailor their coaching to your needs. And my need was I can't be on the phone. It's too much of a time suck. It was a bottleneck. So I hired my acquisitions manager, and about a couple of months later, maybe, I hired my marketing manager, and we have been skyrocketing since. And I will, if I could add something real quick, I talked to my bookkeeper the other day, and they told me my business since the previous year has grown 292%.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's incredible.
So where did you find this acquisition person?
You know, I hate when people ask me this question, and only because I got incredibly lucky. When people ask about hiring team, I'm like, I have no secret formula for you. I have no tips and I have no advice. In all honesty, what happened was I put an ad, or not an ad, but I put a post up on the REtipster Facebook group, and I was like, can anybody recommend an intake manager? And a girl reached out to me that's in your master class, and she was like, I'll do it. And I was like, all right. So I started working with her, and she's been awesome. And then we were talking about needing a marketing manager, and she's like, well, my friend can do it. I'm like, all right, sure, I'll give her a shot. And she's been amazing too. I'm seriously incredibly lucky with these two girls, because they've been phenomenal. And I just got lucky. I didn't really find them anywhere. They kind of found me. So
you just put this post out there on Facebook, and like they responded as a comment, or that they direct messaged you or something? Were they the only people who responded, or did you get like 20 people and you just happened to pick the right one?
A couple people. So a little bit of a longer story. This one guy reached out to me first, and he was learning the business. He was in another country. I was looking for somebody who could speak English fluently, because I needed somebody to call, sellers and call accounting. I didn't want there to be any sort of communication breakdown. And he was fine with that. He just, at the end of the day, he didn't have the time to commit. But right about that same time, I got a message from another guy who is my intake manager's husband, because my intake manager at the time didn't have Facebook. So he was kind of reaching out on her behalf. And I said, well, I'm sorry, I just found this other guy. And then when that guy didn't work out, I went back to her husband and was like, is she still interested? And we started just talking through Messenger, and kind of the rest has been history since then. But
yeah, and just to confirm, when you say intake manager, is that synonymous with acquisitions manager? Like, you talk about the same thing, same person?
I call it that, but in all honesty, at this point, I'm responsible for sending out the mail, and then once the calls start coming in, they basically go directly to her, and she handles pretty much everything. Occasionally, she'll set a deal for review, or a purchase for a review, but she'll handle everything all the way up to marketing. And when it's time to market the property, it gets switched over to our sales and marketing manager, and then she takes it all the way to the end. And at some point, a mobile notary shows up at my house, and I just sign the documents, and they wire me the money.
Yeah, so a bunch of questions are coming out as I hear you talk. So
yeah.
It's really interesting. So the intake manager or acquisitions person, so in your business anyway, so are you sending out like blind offers? So the offer price has already been out there, or is this person deciding on the offer on your behalf? Is it like a neutral letter?
Yeah. So we were doing range offers I've done a mix of everything. We were doing range offers for a while, and I actually stopped doing those. And we have recently, we're still making adjustments, but we've recently went to full neutral letters, and we mail 3,000 a week. So 3,000 neutral letters go out each week. Again, I'm tweaking it a little bit to kind of cut down on tire kickers and people that expect market value prices. When the call comes in, she does a little bit of quick due diligence, just on the property. And actually, it goes direct to voicemail. She does a quick little due diligence. She does comps, and then she'll kind of determine, like, this is the market value. This is 75%, which is what we try to sell our properties at. This is the 33% of what we'd like to make an offer on. And then I have started giving her more freedom and kind of tiering things where this is how much money I want to make if we're selling the property for this amount. So there is a profit spread that we're kind of trying to hit at certain tiers. So she will automatically, I have set it where she can automatically approve deals without my input. However, the caveat to that is we also do mostly options. So the risk of being off is very low. I mean, if we have to buy it cash, that I automatically review it. If she's not quite confident in her comps, she'll set it for me to review it. But if she's confident in it enough and she can get it under an option agreement, it just pushes right through. So yeah, occasionally we have deals that I don't even know about. I'm like, oh, this is happening. Okay.
So you're doing options a lot, you say? So, like what percentage are going the option route versus purchase agreement? We're going to buy it and that's our intent.
95, 99% option.
And that's, I know a lot of this is sort of in the art of communication, that kind of thing, but is it harder to get deals under option when you're not really making a commitment to somebody? Like, how do you explain it to a person so that they're like, yeah, okay, I'll take a discounted offer on an option with no commitment from you to buy it?
I was afraid you were going to ask this because I kind of don't know. She does have a script, but she's also like gotten really good at it. I think basically she gives him, some information about, first we go at him with, this is our offer. This is the amount. This is the option. We're doing this because, maybe there's not a lot of comps in the area. We're new to that area. We don't have a lot of confidence in the market yet because we just got here. So she'll, maybe the property is really rural and we're not sure about our buyers, if they're going to want that. So she'll come up with some sort of reason that we should go with the option route. Frequently, but not all the time, they'll say, well, I don't like the option. How much are you willing to offer me cash? And then it gets set back to review. I'll review it and I'll say, this is our cash offer, which is obviously cheaper. And that is where we end up buying some properties cash. But she manages to sell them on option. And they are higher, obviously, but our risk is so low and we're able to not have to borrow money very often. In fact, I've only had to partner with somebody for finances that one time when I was by myself. Since then, we've just been kind of maintaining our process.
Yeah. And just for people out there who are listening, so if you do have any curiosity about like how to explain this kind of offer to somebody where it's non-committal, but it's still low, I've got a blog post I put together. We also had a conversation with Renee Riker in episode 30 of the podcast. It's REtipster.com/30 or REtipster.com/wholesaling is the article I put together about this. But the way that we explain it is a little bit different. It's with, you get a regular purchase agreement signed with an assignment clause in it. But the whole idea is, how do you explain this to somebody in a way that they can get on board and they're fully informed, like they understand what's happening, but it's not too confusing that they're going to say no. There's a lot of explanation in those resources if you want to check it out. But just with you, Jesse, so it sounds like if you're getting stuff under option, does that mean I guess one question is, how long is that option out there? And what do you have to pay, if anything, to get that thing enforced? And is your intent to like never buy it yourself, like just assign it to somebody else? Or do you buy it and then quickly sell it in a double closing? How does that work?
So first off, we do explain to them that we are going to market the property for this time. We used to do 90 days, and then I'm not sure what happened. At some point, I think my acquisitions manager made a mistake and accidentally told them 120 days, and they didn't disagree. So we're like, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll keep trying that. And so now the majority of them are 120 days, and we'll use that as a negotiation tactic. We'll say, well, what if we did it for 90 days? Or if it's a large property and it's expensive, we'll try to push that to 180 days because we realize that our buyer pool will be a little bit smaller. And what was one of the other questions?
Yeah. Do you have to put down any kind of money or consideration to enforce this thing?
No, we don't.
Okay. So basically, if they just said, no, I don't want to, like there's not really anything you can do about it, but they're not going to do that.
So occasionally, and it depends on what county we're in, we will, it depends on a number of things, but it certainly depends on the county. We'll record the option contract to collect the title.
Okay. So they got to get it notarized and everything? Or?
No, we just record it we e-record it. But we did get, we made the mistake one time of we started doing it more frequently when we kind of got screwed on the deal. It got bought from underneath us. Actually, we ended up being the mistress on that one. It turned out the guy had a sales agreement with somebody else before us. And while it was going through title, our title company came back and was like, it's already been sold. I'm like, okay, well, I guess we'll start recording our agreements. So it depends. If it's a really big deal, yeah, we'll try to make sure we're recording that.
And does that, like, what percentage of these deals would you say fall apart and don't go anywhere? Like they agree to the option and...
Yeah, so that was what I was going to say. We obviously try really hard to pick properties that we are confident we can sell within 90 days. And that takes a lot. That does take experience, and that takes knowledge and having all your right data, because we don't want to go back to the seller and say, sorry, we couldn't sell your property. And in the past year, that's probably happened 2 or 3 times. It really doesn't happen that often. We get better at it as time goes on, but yeah.
Yeah. And are you sticking to the, classic, I don't know, 10 to 20 to 30, maybe even 40% of market value when you're putting these options on? Or are you free to go up to like 80% or whatever? Because like there's no money on the line unless you get the thing sold, right?
Yeah. So here's one of the reasons I went with neutral letters. As this industry becomes more and more popular, I'm not going to say it's saturated because we keep pulling deals out. I mean, we target Mojave all the time. I mean, we still pull deals out. It's the most saturated market. But what I'm realizing is when I first came into this, people were talking about the days when you could offer 10%. Now everybody's offering 20, 25%. And then when I really started getting when I started picking up speed, I was offering 33%. Then I hear people offering 40%. And I'm like, I can't keep up with this. Let's just throw neutral letters out there. And when they come in, we'll just try to make a certain amount of spread. And that's, like I was saying about our tiered, it's not concrete, but it's like, look, if we're buying a property for $10,000, I don't want to pay more than $5,000 for it. So anything under $5,000 we'll get. If it's a $20,000 deal, it'd be nice to make $10,000. If it's a $50,000 deal, I'd like to make, maybe $15,000 or $20,000 on it. And it kind of keeps going up. So it depends on how much work is involved, because that's another thing. If I get this property and I can make it, and it's an awesome property, and I know I could sell it within a couple of weeks, then yeah, I'll take even if it's a $50,000 property, I'll take the $10,000 because I know I'll have it sold by the end of the week. Not that that always happens, but yeah, at this point, we're looking at it by property basis.
So it's not really so much about percentages, it's just about like how many dollars can we pull out of this, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
So like, I don't know, just as an example, what would be like the highest percentage of market value that you would offer? Like what's an extreme case where you would go way above and beyond? Like do you ever go over 50%, for example, or 60%?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I'd have to look at what we have on the record right now, but
No big deal if you don't have
yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, I at 100, let's say I could sell it for $100,000. I would like to make a minimum of $20,000 on that property. So yeah, what's that? 80%. But again, depends on how much work. If we're going to have it on the books for 6 months, if it's really rural, if it's going to be hard to sell, then I'll offer less. But yeah, again, if I think I can sell it fast and I can make 20 grand in a couple of weeks or in less than a month, then, absolutely. Obviously there's negotiations that have to be made with the seller. Like we do obviously start low. We don't give them our highest offer, but with my acquisitions manager, it's like, hey, I think we should start here, but don't go above this amount without talking to me first. And then if we have to go over that amount, then I go back, I really do a review of the property, and I really start looking a lot deeper at it to see whether or not we could go higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But for the most part, that's not the case.
And
so I'm sorry, I don't have a percentage amount for you.
No, that's no problem. I just sometimes that helps me get clarity is just to like throw, I don't know, look for the most extreme example of something just to understand what are we talking about here. So that's why I ask. But so okay, let's say you get $100,000 property. It's worth that, and you get it on an option for, I don't know, 80,000, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
You market it, and then somebody says, "Hey, I want to buy it. Let's do it." Are you like buying it, like you're exercising the option to buy it yourself, and then you're selling it to them with a double closing, or are you somehow assigning the option and they jump in? How do the mechanics of that work?
So we've been really fortunate to. We have expanded, but when we started doing this method I'm about to tell you about, we started in Arizona, and we work with Great American Title Agency out of Phoenix. They have been awesome, and I recommend them to everybody. We've also found one in Tennessee that we use, and what we've been able to do with them is do a true A to C double close, where they use the buyer's money and they pay everybody, and that has been a huge game changer for us. Not only that, they're able to do it without disclosing what our profit would be to either party, which has also been phenomenal for us, because sometimes our spread is massive. It's almost like it would be insulting to both parties. But if we did an assignment, then that assignment fee would have to be revealed and our profit would be disclosed. And I don't really love that. You could do it, certainly. I'd rather be some things to be undisclosed. So we have the option come in, we get that signed, we market it, we find a buyer. We get both parties to sign a sales agreement. We take those sales agreement, send them to our title company. Title company handles everything. It comes back. I sign. Then the notary shows up. I sign all this paperwork. Send it back to the title company. A couple days later, they wire us our money. Not all of the deals work out that way, and as I'm expanding the business and moving into different states, we'll probably have to start enacting transactional funding, which won't stop me at all from doing. Just if I can't find a title company to do what we want, I'll have to adjust.
Yeah, and I know some of this stuff is getting into like state-specific law, even like in some states. I think Ohio's one that always comes to mind. I forget the other ones, but in some states, doing this kind of thing where you put an option or a purchase agreement with the intent of assigning it, or you're sort of, some people perceive that to be pretending you're a real estate agent when you're not, because you're sort of working on somebody else's behalf to market and list their property and sell it. But so anyway, I think that is one important thing, is just to understand, is this allowed in this state or not? And I think in most states it's fine, but there are some where it's like, it's a problem. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I kind of half jokingly say I just do what I want. I realize that is a very important thing, and I don't recommend somebody going into a state and just doing whatever they want willy-nilly. We also are at a point where we insist on going, all of our deals are pretty much going through title companies, except for a couple of them. So we kind of put a lot of the legalities on the title companies. As far as option agreements and marketing, I'm kind of moving ahead without really researching each state specifically at this moment, but knowing full well, what I would like to do is every state that we go into, hire an attorney, drop the right paperwork, talk to them. And we've done that in a couple of states that we've worked. But as we're moving forward so fast, I really haven't had the time. So any attorneys or narcs out there listening, you didn't hear anything from me. But yeah, that's on our very near horizon to make sure we're doing all these things legally.
Yeah. I hate to say this because in my position, the stance I always choose to take is talk to an attorney, like get the right state answers, blah, blah, blah. And it's super boring and slow and annoying. And I totally get it because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it'd be bad for me to say, yeah, just go do whatever you want, figure it out. But I got to tell you, like, there's this weird commonality I notice among people who just like blow up and do huge is they kind of take that approach where they're just like, I'm just going to bump into the walls. If I make mistakes, so be it. If somebody sues me, so be it. Whatever. I'm just going to move forward at all costs. And like, I don't know, like, is that prudent? I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe not, but like, look at the results. Like they get really far. So I don't know. It's hard to know.
And the land investing industry, it's so gray. It's like, I don't know. And I've talked to attorneys like land investing, not investing, but attorneys that know what they're talking about. And they're like, yeah, it's kind of a gray area. Like they don't have the answers, like this is your state. You're an attorney in the state. And they're like, yeah, well, it depends. I'm like, all right, so I want to do things as legal as possible, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I'm hoping karma will come back and not sue me.
Yeah. I think what it is, honestly, is that most attorneys and CPAs, like, they just don't deal with land, period. So, like, even though they are experienced in all this stuff, like, it's just a super niche industry. It's hard to get the answers, and you got to dig. And sometimes you get the wrong answers from people who tell you like they know it, and it's super frustrating. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's tough to know where do you draw the line in terms of how much information do I need to have before I'm comfortable moving forward, because you can totally get stuck and never move anywhere if everything needs to be known and perfect before you make a move. And I think I know the answer to this, but just want to clarify. In the days when you were sending blind offers or arrange offers, when you were doing that, that was not in the form of an option, correct? Or was it?
I've kind of always done options. Not always. In the very beginning, I don't think I even knew. Well, maybe I did know about them. I was buying property super cheap, $500, $1,500 to $2,500. So I was buying cash. But I also didn't start with a lot of. I mean, I started with $10,000, but it ran out pretty quick.
Yeah.
Especially when you only buy 2-3 properties, you're done. So options came out of a necessity, and as things grow, we keep buying more and more properties, which keeps sucking up our profits, which is great, but it doesn't leave us with a lot, which is fine. So if I wanted to scale and be greedy about keeping my money and not giving half of it to a partner, I had to get creative. And so it's an added step, because then you have to go back and get another agreement signed. So there's added steps, but I love the options because the risk is super low and it allows us to scale huge. I mean, not that I have, but get $1 million property under option. Now, granted, I suppose if I did that, I would use probably a better option, because our option is just like a one-page option. But it does allow us to keep going almost relatively risk-free and without any money out of pocket. I mean, we have a regular overhead, but if you can do that true A to C close, you haven't really spent any money except for your regular overhead, and then they just wire you a check for, $10,000 to $40,000, like, infinite ROI, right?
I'm actually really surprised you even found anybody to do this single source
I was
funding.
too.
Is the term I've heard it called, where you basically
Yeah.
use the end buyer's funds to pay the land investor and the original
Mm-hmm.
seller. Because that used to be pretty commonplace back before the crash of 2008, and then a lot of people were just like, "No, it's too weird. We're not going to do it." But that's I
Mm-hmm.
mean that's a big deal. And how did you find a title company to do that? Did you just get lucky, or how did you know what questions to ask, and did it take a long time to find them?
It did take a little bit. When I was doing self-closing myself, that's what I was doing. On my own, I would get the buyer to send me the money, and then I would just do the self-close within like a couple days. So I knew it could be done. And I forget exactly what happened, but at some point it got to a pretty big property that I wanted it to go through title. And so I started calling, I just Googled and I started calling title companies, working my way down the list. And I basically struck gold on one of them. And once I found that out, I was just like, we are always going to mail Arizona because we can make it work, and it works out. And we will always give every Arizona deal we can get, we're going to give to Great American. And there have been times where the seller has wanted to use their own title company, but we've been able to convince them to go with our own title. It was like, hey, we've worked with this title company a lot. They're great. We've already vetted them for this type of transactions. We have a long history and a great rapport with them. So we will occasionally have to talk them up to the seller, but it's always kind of worked out. I think one deal we had to go through Pioneer, which Pioneer's great too. But we were able to, I actually think the seller went through Pioneer and then the buyer went through Great American, I think, on one of them. It was a little strange, but yeah. And then the one we found in Tennessee, my acquisition manager who went through your class, kind of does a little bit on her side, and she found that one. But we've been pretty lucky by just kind of asking around, looking for investor-friendly companies, and just hitting Google. But we're moved into a few other states at this point. We haven't quite found that title company to do that there. But like I said, I'm not above doing transactional lending or asking for transactional lending. We've just been lucky enough not to have had to use it yet.
Is there anything special about your option agreement? Like, does it include some, like, you will allow us to do a double closing, that kind of thing? Or is it just a pretty standard boilerplate option template?
It's a pretty standard boilerplate option. We have recently had to add a POA, a sort of, purchase, power of attorney, which scares people, but it's really only for advertising or for marketing. It's a marketing power of attorney that allows us to put it on the MLS if we're going to take that route. So it does include that.
So the seller is saying, I allow you to be limited power of attorney to market this property on my behalf, basically?
Yes.
Okay. And that's just
Yes.
a clause that's baked into the option?
Yeah, pretty much. It's the second page
Okay.
of our option.
Cool. Is it just a 2-page document total, or it's pretty simple?
Yeah. I wish it was more concrete, solid looking, but I don't know how much weight. In all honesty, I don't know how much weight an option holds. We record them sometimes to cloud the title, which would be something. If the seller sold it from underneath us, I'm probably not going to take him to court on it.
It holds weight when money is exchanged for it, is the answer to that.
I do know that, yeah, and that kind of adds another element to the whole thing where, yes, you could send him $100 as a consideration, absolutely, But we also try to keep up with our sellers and let them know, hey, this is. I was just talking to the acquisition manager today. I was like, hey, call this guy every couple weeks and just give him a heads up, that this is how marketing is going on your property, in case they decide they're going to pull out. So, which hasn't only happened one time because the man got confused, but yeah, I I realize I'm playing this whole game very loosey goosey, and at some point I do want to tighten all those nuts and bolts down and really do it. But there's so much going on right now. I'm having a hard time just keeping this thing rolling. So
yeah, I'm well, a bunch of different thoughts are still swirling around my mind. But I know back when we talked to Renee about how she does assignments with purchase agreements, and even in my own personal experience of doing this, there was a season where I did this a lot. Like every deal would be this, not an option, but you get a purchase agreement with the right to assign it. Same general idea, a little bit cleaner, but a little, I don't know, you just got to be really clear with the seller about what's going on. But I found that probably like half the deals that I would try to do this way would fall apart. And I think what was going on is like I was doing everything I could because I was like, well, why not? I mean, there's no money out of my pocket. Why not just do it? But it sounds like you've got better criteria for like really understanding, okay, this is a good deal. We're confident this will sell for this price. And it sounds like that's because if a deal doesn't go to fruition, you just wasted a whole lot of time trying to push something that did nothing for you. And I'm wondering, how do you know? Like, how do you get confident? Okay, this is going to be a good deal. Is it just, I don't know. What do you look at?
So we do have minimum requirements. As the company has grown, our minimum requirements have grown. And at this point, one of our minimum requirements is a $5,000 profit. If we can't make $5,000 by selling it at 75%, then it's an automatic pass. But there is the topography, there is access, flood zones. There are things that if we pass on landlocked deals. I know a lot of people that do them, and it works out great for them. But they can be a struggle and they can be difficult to sell. And if the buyer can't find the property, that can be difficult. So we pick properties that aren't on the side of a mountain. They have road access. They have some worth. And we also target active areas. Again, I hesitate to call them saturated, but they are very active areas, very active counties. So we know properties are selling there. If there's not anything selling there, if the comps are really, if we can't find any comps, then we'll probably pass on that too, due to lack of, market value or lack of market research. So yeah, if it really does have to be pretty active in that area. We have to have, I shouldn't say we have to, but I'd like to see at least 6 comps really close to that property's location and attributes. So there's a number of things.
Yeah, and if you can't get that, like say if there's only 2 comps or something, you just think, well, we're not going to do it. Right? Like is that the criteria at which you say it's not worth our time?
We kind of have to check a lot of boxes. If there's only a couple comps, but it's like we could potentially make some really good money if we sold it, then, we might let it go through. But it does have to check a lot of other boxes. I mean, we've got to kind of weigh our pros and cons.
How do you compensate them? Like, are you just paying them an hourly rate, or did they get like a chunk of each deal? Or what would motivate somebody who understands the land business and is a really good worker? Like, what would make them happy enough to keep doing this?
So I started them off when they first came on. I can't really speak. So my acquisition manager, who is very familiar with the land business, she does a little bit on her own on the side. And I can't really speak for her, but I think the reason she sticks around is because all of our systems are in place, and she still has a a business to build. She's also, they're both stay-at-home moms. So I think that I provide, I don't know if I want to call it easy work because I know it's not easy, but I do provide all the tools to just say, hey, here's everything you need to do the job. You don't have to build all this stuff on your own. I started them off at $10 an hour. When they got a little bit better, I started them off at $10 an hour plus 5% of gross profit. Then when they got a better understanding of it, it went to $15 an hour plus 5% of gross profit. And then my acquisitions manager went on maternity leave, so my marketing manager helped fill in for her position, and I told her I will bump you up to $20 an hour plus 5% of gross profit. And then when the acquisitions manager comes back, she'll get $20 an hour plus 5% of gross profit. So that's where we're at. They both get $20 an hour plus 5% of gross profit.
Okay, gotcha.
And they're US based.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that's a huge deal though. I mean, especially for a stay-at-home mom, when just having that flexibility and an employer who understands that stuff, that goes a long way. So,
yeah.
And I remember what I was going to ask you. So earlier when I was asking you back when you used to send blind offers or range offers, so like, what does that look like if you're sending an option? Like you have a one-page letter that explains this is not a purchase agreement. This is an option. And then the second page is an option? Or does it start with a purchase agreement and then morphs into an option once you talk to them? And I'm just trying to understand, or are you just not sending out options that way? Because you kind of have to know the number, you know, and if you're willing to go so much higher, it kind of changes things.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been a while since I've actually thought about this, so it might take me a moment. When I was sending my blind offers, there were an amount in there, obviously. I want to say there was also, no, I think there was just an amount in there. And of course, there's also like a line at the bottom that says, you know, a counter offer for you to fill in. And sometimes they would come back with that. And I believe the blind offer amount was set at 33%. And let's say that's the cash amount. I'm pretty sure it was like the cash amount. And so when they called in, if I wanted to do an option, I said, all right, well, here's, again, you got to hear me a second to think about it. But the blind, all right, so really anytime you send an offer, it's a shot in the dark. It's a calculated shot in the dark, but it's a shot in the dark. So when they call, then you really will hone in on what you can offer. Hopefully you're pretty close to that, right? And then you realize, all right, I can offer you this much cash, or I can offer you this much as an option. Usually the 33% was a cash offer. So now I could say, I can offer you a little bit more if you're willing to do an option agreement. Or, I'm sorry, your property ended up not because of this, that, or the other thing. I can only offer you this amount of cash. I know the blind offer said this, that, right? So you get that. And then the range offer, the way I was doing that was, it was pretty tricky. Whew, that was mentally exhausting. That's part of the reason I only send neutrals now. But I would basically break that down to, been a while since I thought about this one too. I would basically break that down to 0 to 5 acre, not really 5 acres, but wherever the curve set, right? 0 to 5 acres seem to fall between $150 an acre to $300 an acre in this area. So that's what I would put on my range letter.
Okay.
And I don't think we ever mentioned anything about it. It's really not until they call in do we give them the option agreement option.
And the range, just to clarify, when we're talking about range offers, does that mean you're sending people, like a single person will receive more than one offer price? Or does that mean it ranges based on how big the property is? Like if it's 0 to 5 acres, you get this much per acre. If it's 5 to 10 acres, you get this higher amount per acre. Like what do you mean by range offers exactly?
So I I would break it down to 0 to X, X to Y, Y to Z, but those were broken down by acre ranges and towns. So I would comp an entire town. I break all that up into acre ranges, and then I could come up with generally a solid number. So let's say it's $300, right? But probably I could be willing to pay more and I'd be willing to pay less. So if my hard number for 0 to 5 acres was $300, I would try to put that right in the middle of my range and say, I'm offering $200 to $400 an acre. And then the next size, say it's a, 5.01 would be to 10 would be a different range amount. That's why it was so mentally taxing, because I would do that for every town in my entire data list. And so I'd have like 20 something towns in this one county and just have to go nuts trying to figure out everybody's offer. And then if I wasn't confident in it, they would get a neutral letter, or if I just thought it was way too high, they would get a neutral letter. And I ended up realizing that about a third of these offers ended up being neutral letters anyway. So just give them all a neutral letter.
So if I'm hearing you right, was there any benefit to doing these range offers, or is it just no? Like, just don't bother with it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I thought it worked out great. Honestly, we got a lot more calls. I was doing blinds and neutrals before, and then that was one of the things Clint suggested was the range letter, which at the time, at the beginning of 2021, I hadn't heard of. Now the secret is out, and it really worked great. Honestly, I mean, I loved it because it gave the sellers a number, but it wasn't market value. But it also kind of gave them what's the word I'm looking for? It gave them, I'm losing the word, but they were able to realize that they're not going to get market value, but they will get something. Obviously, most of them wanted a higher amount, or the top part of your range, but you would tell them, for whatever reason, I can't give you that price. Not every time. I mean, I'm willing to offer more if it works out for me. So yeah, it was a real game changer for us because we were getting a lot more calls and we were able to negotiate with them and make adjustments and, give them an amount. So it didn't set a precedence that they're going to get market value, but it did give them sort of a number.
Yeah. So, and again, just to clarify this a little bit further. So when you said earlier, $200 to $400 an acre, does that mean that in your letter, you're literally saying, say if it's, 5 acres, we will pay you somewhere between.
Yeah, I think I know what you're asking. So I think the line said something like, in this area, we're offering this much to this much per acre for land. I didn't put the math in there.
Mm-hmm. So you're not actually giving them an offer at all. You're just saying, we're paying this much per acre around this. Okay.
Yes, in this area, in your area, or in your, yeah. All right. I'm sorry. I understand what you're asking now.
Because I've heard people doing it the other way, where they do actually give them an offer. Like, it'll be between this and this price. And people just assume it's going to be the higher price and call, but then you got to talk them out of it. And so it sounds like those numbers are just kind of there to lure more people to call, because you're giving them something to sink their teeth into in terms of what it might be.
Yes, absolutely. But I would only do it if I were really confident in those amounts. And if I wasn't, I would send a neutral letter. Mm-hmm. So I would say the majority of the time, my numbers were pretty accurate. I could fall within that range.
Yeah. Would you say the range offers get more responses than the neutral letters, or the opposite?
Probably not. And that's something I'm starting to adjust, or try to adjust, with the neutral letters. The one thing about the neutral letters is you get a ton of calls. People expect market value prices, but you get a ton more calls. And part of the reason that I've gone to neutral letters is because I've tailored our letter in a way that it does tell them we are an investment company. We can't pay market value prices. So it does let them know that is in there. But I also started trying to cut out lower valued properties. Where did I pull my list? And I'm sorry, part of the reason that I am also doing the neutral letters is because I have a team to handle those neutral letters. When I was by myself, there was no way I could handle this amount of volume of neutral letters, because honestly, we get, I mean, maybe 20 calls a day. I mean, it's crazy. Our marketing manager's calling. I mean, I think when you reached out about the podcast, she had like 40 something people to call back that day. And she's on top of her game. Like, she's calling dozens of people back every day. And we are passing on a lot of them, and it can be a bit overwhelming. But I really feel like if you're going to send that volume of neutral letters, you really need to have a team of people, because you get a ton of calls. And so I'm trying to cut out tire kickers, or people that are expecting market value prices, or properties that don't meet our minimum requirements. So there's a lot of tailoring that's happening now, and that will continue to happen in order to bring those calls down, and bring the response rate down and the purchase rate up.
So it sounds like you probably get the most calls from neutral letters, in medium with range offers, and then probably the least amount of calls or responses from blind offers, right?
I would say so. Yes.
So I don't know, maybe could it be said that your direct mail dollars are best spent on neutral letters, but it's also going to cost you a lot more time to get to the bottom of those? Is that an accurate statement?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. And having a full-time acquisitions person on staff, so when these people call in, are they calling directly to her, or they call a voicemail, or they call Pat Live, or how do you handle that intake?
With Google Voice, I'm a little on the fence about Google Voice, but I've used it the entire time, so I'm going to keep doing it. I don't know if some people have said, well, what's going to happen when Google Voice or Google decides to eliminate it? I don't know. I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get there. When I was doing this by myself, I set it to go directly to voicemail for a couple of reasons. One, I wasn't always in front of my computer to even know what they were talking about, or who it was that they were calling, or who was calling. Also, I realized one day that sending them directly to voicemail is kind of a qualifier. I figure if they want to sell bad enough, they'll leave a voicemail. If they want to buy bad enough, they'll leave a voicemail. So it goes to a voicemail, it goes directly to a voicemail. When the acquisition manager gets it, she does her quick due diligence, her comps, we talk about the property, maybe review it a little bit, and then she calls them back with an offer. That usually happens within 24 hours. Every morning I wake up, I go through any reviews that I have to do, and she has her own schedule. But within 24 hours, we call them back with an offer.
Okay, sweet.
For our initial call is an offer.
All these questions came up that I wasn't even planning on. This is awesome. So I appreciate you being so open and just sharing what's been going on. But so just for fun, are there any examples of like awesome deals you've done in terms of like purchase price, sale price, how much you made and learned along the way? Like what's a normal deal and what's considered an amazing deal for you?
So a couple of notable deals that come to mind are the first deal that really kicked this whole thing off, the scaling. I'll try to tell this one real quick, but I came across a great deal. It was an older woman. The property was worth about $100,000. I said, well, I have this, we could do an option. I'll offer you, $55,000 or whatever it was, and we'll do it for 90 days. And she's like, okay, that's great. Then she calls me back the next day, and she's like, I really need the money right now. And of course, I think at the time I only had like a few $1,000s in my account. So right before that, Ryan Pope, who is a land investor but also does private lending, had reached out to me, and he says, let me know if you got any deals coming up and we could partner on. So I reached out to him, and he's like, offer her $35,000, see what she says. I said, all right. So I went back, offered her $35,000, and she took it. Then we immediately began marketing the property. I think I had it sold within like 2 weeks, and I sold it like $90,000 or something. And so after everything was all split, we both, I think I maybe walked with like 24 or something like that.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah, that was amazing. And then I had the money to really put it back into this. Another deal that is kind of notable was, it was pretty much a landlocked property that was 260 acres, and it was right next to a lime mine. And I was like, who is going to buy this thing? And I think I remember I was like sitting there looking at it at Google Maps, and I was like, I'm going to call the mine. So I called the mine, and they're like, yeah, we're interested. And they're like a worldwide corporation. That was a long deal. That thing went like 6 months because they had to have like it had to be brought up in their quarterly meetings that were like in Belgium.
Oh man.
And like it was wild. But at the end, they bought it. I sold it to the neighbor who was a mine. And I made pretty good on that one. I think I made like 30 something on that one.
Cool, man. That's interesting.
Yeah, so those are some pretty notable ones. We have 3 right now from one seller. One's like a 90 acre, one's 100 acre, another one's like 129 acre. I think if we sell all those, I think we'll probably net close to 90 total on those. However, I think most of our deals probably net us between 10 and 40,000. I think the majority of them are probably float around $20,000. I would like to push our minimum profit to 10,000. I'm kind of doing that now, maybe up to 20,000 next year sometime, because I realized making $5,000 and making $40,000 takes just as much work. If I can get the same amount of volume at 20 plus, then, all the better for everybody.
So have you quarantined most of your direct mail efforts to like a couple states then? So like I've heard you mention Arizona and Tennessee.
So this past year, actually, I've always focused on about one county a month. And I haven't really had the time to do much more than that. Now that I have the team doing it, now I can focus on targets, right? In the beginning of the year, we targeted Mojave and Yavapai, and it was like one right after the other. And we killed it. Absolutely amazing. I was like, holy moly, we're killing it. And then my acquisition manager went on maternity leave, so I kind of turned the dial down, and we were only mailing about 500. We were mailing 1,500 a week. Then we went to 500 a week just so we can kind of keep going. And then when she came back, I was like, all right, it's been about 4 or so months since we targeted Mojave and Yavapai. Let's hit them again because we did so great. We'll just really kick this mule and get going, rocketing up this hill again. Total flop. No idea why. I still can't figure it out. So I realized from that I need to target more counties or more areas at the same time. So my most recent strategy has been 5 different counties in 5 different states. Each week it rotates. So, 1 week it's county A, 3,000 letters. Next week, county B, 3,000 letters, or, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it rotates again. So every week, one of the 5 counties gets 3,000 letters. So now we're officially a coast-to-coast company, investing company.
And so 3,000 a week. So I assume you're the one pulling the lists and targeting the markets and doing whatever sorting has to happen and actually pulling the trigger on mailing stuff out. Is there any like software or anything that you use to sort of keep that on track? Because I know that can be kind of a lot of work, unless you've got some good automation in place.
Yeah, it was exhausting. But I've also said by doing that with the 5 counties and 3,000 a week, I was able to do it. This is another thing I'm trying to employ is mailing in yearly quarters instead of each month, because that's what I was doing before. So now when I send mail, it's for the next 3 months, you know? So I don't, it does take a lot of work to do, but I only have to do it every few months. I pull my list from DataTree. It obviously takes me a long time to figure out exactly what I'm going to do. I'm looking at different counties. I'm shaking my head because I'm remembering only about a month ago when I went through all this. I chose the easiest states and then the easiest counties in each one of those states. It ended up like I ended up filtering through 130 something counties. So I kind of researched all of those counties, chose the top 5 and mailed those. Get my list from DataTree, go on, all comes into Google Sheets. I spend a couple days organizing, scrubbing, and setting everything up. And then I send it to RocketPrint. And I told them, this is how I want it mailed. And they put that into place.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it takes me like a week. Yeah, easily.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. You probably save some time, though, with not doing blind offers or range offers, right? Because you're just neutral letters. It's more just filter for what you want, and that's
it. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't. I use Price Boss, which I like, and it allows me to have full control, but I'm neurotic. So I have to have full control. I have to adjust every little metric, and I take every little town, and I got to pull in all the data for each one. I got to do all this work. And when I was doing 1 county a month, I'd have to do this every month, and it'd take me 3 days to price that county, and I'd be whooped. I didn't realize how exhausted the body could get from just sitting in front of the computer for day after day.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't, this is the worst part of my job. I can't keep doing this. So that's when I was like, I'm done. I'll just send everybody a neutral letter. I hit a couple walls where I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. You're getting a neutral letter, and you're getting a neutral letter. You're getting a neutral letter.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But yeah, so now the new strategy we're doing, I think it'd be a lot less taxing on my brain.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like that acquisition manager kind of unlocks a lot of possibilities. Sounds like Clint gave you some good advice on that. And it makes me wonder, like, other people who are listening to this, if they want that acquisition manager, like, what is it that yours does so well? Is she good at follow through? Is she good at like verbal communication on the phone, written communication? Like, how could you replicate or clone her if somebody wanted to?
I have no idea. I mean, I got extremely lucky with these 2 girls. I really did. They're both, I don't micromanage them. I don't want to micromanage them. I try to give them as much freedom as I can. They have their own schedules. They have their own lives. They're organized. They're intelligent. They're hardworking. They don't require a lot of overlook. I wish, and that's why I hate when people ask, because I wish I had advice. I wish I could tell you. I don't know. I think my acquisitions manager, because she understands the land business, so much more than anyone else that's just coming in to do a job. She's enthusiastic about getting these deals and, she's pretty enthusiastic about it. But I realize too, this is another thing with, if you take on like I'm not going to call her protege or whatever, because it's not really that kind of relationship. But if you take on a protege, that's somebody that is they're eventually gonna leave, And so I realize that, and that's really gonna be terrible because they're great. But I realize at some point I'm gonna have to do something else. So that's tough too. You can bring somebody in that really knows the business and wants to learn the business, and they can be enthusiastic about the business. But at some point, they're probably going to want to leave to go do their own thing.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I don't have advice for people. I just, like I said, I know how lucky I got with the two of them.
Yeah. And I don't know exactly what's motivating them, but this idea of like sharing in a percentage of the gross profit and that kind of thing, anything you can do to make a person feel like they've got skin in the game and like, I own a little piece of this, coupled with if it's a work they enjoy and they're capable and, yeah, that's
And I think that's part of it too. I mean, I think any job you have that you're enthusiastic about, or that you're not only qualified but you like the work, you're gonna do a better job. I know, I forget who said it. Might have been Jaron on one of the podcasts. It's like they're only gonna do 80% of what you would do, and it's true. And that's fine. But sometimes trying to get them to do 80% can be really hard. But I definitely believe in giving them a commission, a good commission, and I believe in giving them a good hourly salary. I mean, I don't know what motivates them. Money motivates me, so I assume it motivates everybody. But I also try to treat them well and appreciate them, which, I hope is obvious and they deserve. So, yeah, I mean, pay them well, treat them well, Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. Yeah. And I listen to them too. I suggest that, like, tell me what you want. Anything that I could do to make your job easier and more efficient, please let me know. They give me a lot of input. And so, yeah, I mean, we really are like this. This is a team effort at this point, for sure.
Yeah, gotcha. Now, not to leave out your disposition sales, what's her title? What do you call her?
Sales and marketing manager.
Sales and marketing. Okay.
I told her she could name. They can have any name they want.
Mm-hmm.
Queen of sales. I don't care.
My job title is Harvester of Sorrow. So, how do you guys get your property sold? Are you using an agent? Are you just listing it yourself on various websites? Like, what's the key to making that work?
It's a bit property dependent again. I would say the majority of our sales come from land.com, come from agents, and then probably our own listings. We've been kind of cutting back on the MLS agents because, well, we use broker lists, and it can be a little tricky sometimes.
What's a broker list? What do you mean by that?
Brokerless.com.
Oh, I got you. Broker. Okay.
Yeah. Broker lists. We were using them. That works out. Sometimes it doesn't. So we started just kind of cutting that out and seeing if we can get away with not using them. We've recently started Facebook again, which I absolutely despise. But I'm trying to use Justin Melquist's approach of, instead of selling it on Facebook, guiding them to our website and selling them there. So we've been trying to incorporate that. But we also post, we don't do Craigslist, we do Facebook, we do our own website, we have a buyer's list, we have a few other random websites, but yeah, I think the majority of our stuff comes from land.com and agents, and Facebook has been kind of picking up.
How do you decide if and when to enlist the help of an agent to get these things sold? Is it like certain areas or markets or price ranges, or?
I don't know if we really have an exact science for that. We weren't using them, and then we also post on Zillow. But then when Zillow changed their layout to hide, for sale by owners, that's when we started bringing in the agent. And it's worked out to some extent. But sometimes it's, you pay $150 or whatever it may be for an MLS listing. And it's just been getting a bit more complicated. That's when we added the power of attorney to our option, which I don't love, because power of attorney to a seller looks like power of attorney. I'm giving these people power of attorney. It's just been getting a little bit more complicated, and not all agents want to list. For a while, we were sourcing our own agents, but they don't want to do a non-exclusive contract. Or we had one great guy, but then he went to a different broker, and then that broker wouldn't let him do his thing. So
I wonder if there's a different way you could word power of attorney. Because I know that just that term might freak some people out. Maybe there's like a different way you could title that clause and basically say the same thing, so they're still giving you the same authority.
So we didn't actually come up with that document. The agent that at the time we were working with sent us that document. But yeah, I think what I ended up doing was, it's a simple document. Honestly, it's one page. It's like 75% of it is just your signature, and it has to be notarized, which I didn't love, because now you got to get that notarized. The seller needs to notarize it. But I did put, I bolded the part that says, for marketing purposes only. So.
Yep. Cool.
The thing about marketing is it's a forever changing beast. So you're constantly making adjustments, and this works one day, that doesn't work the next day.
I know. How many deals do you think you lose as a result of pushing this option thing? Do you have any sense for how many people would have said yes if you had just done a cash offer versus even maybe a lower cash offer, but still it's a purchase agreement?
Right. Believe it or not, I don't think many. If they really balk at the idea, we'll ask them, okay, well, how much would you take for the property? Would you take a cash offer for the property? I mean, there are, some negotiation tactics in there. If we can get away with the option, then we get away with it. And it seems like we do. And I'm not above offering them cash, but that comes as a second conversation. I mean, a lot of the times, I'm sorry to cut you off, but a lot of the times the option is, obviously it is a higher offer than a cash offer. And if they hate that offer, they're not going to like the cash offer. So if they don't want the deal with an option, and they're not even considering that, then they're probably not going to consider a cash option or a cash offer anyway. So they probably wouldn't take it anyway.
Yeah, I think that's probably usually correct. Although sometimes, I don't know, people are motivated by different things, Somebody might be like, hey, I got to get this thing sold in a month. So in that case, maybe, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's probably just right on. Well, I would just ask, is seller financing something you ever do, or are you just selling these all cash?
I almost always offer owner financing. However, I do have to make the down payment adjustable.
How does that work for an option scenario?
Yeah, so the down payment is usually going to cover the acquisition cost, or the cost to the seller. If we have the money in the bank, I'll knock it down. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
But yeah, I always offer it, because why not? I mean, but I only have two offers owner financing sales right now, because people just keep buying cash. I was trying to build up my terms portfolio, but seems like everybody keeps buying cash. I don't want to turn cash away.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Are you sort of changing the price based on seller financing versus cash, or is it just that kind of world right now where people have extra cash to throw around?
I think it's a combination of things. I think that sometimes because our down payment is a little bit higher, they're like, well, for another, however much money, I'll just buy cash. Our cash offer is 75% of market value, and our owner financing amount, principal, I guess, would be actual market value, or what we determine to be market value.
Okay, gotcha.
So, but I also think partially it's because as my business is growing, I keep going after more and more expensive deals as long as the volume remains the same. And when you're selling properties for, 30, 40, 50, $60,000, I don't think as many people choose to go with owner financing in that case. I think if you're going to spend $50,000, you probably have $50,000. When I was doing more owner financing before they got paid off, they were under like $15,000.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So I think that's part of it.
I know we mentioned, just in passing, you mentioned like Data Tree, Rocket Print, Google Voice. Are there any other like crucial software tools that have been instrumental in helping you do this kind of stuff? Like what's stuff that you would die if you didn't have access to it?
Our CRM, I use LandSpeed. I started off with LandSpeed. It works really well for us. I think some people love it, some people don't. I have tweaked it and tailored it a little bit on my own to make it work, our workflow a little bit better, which I do like about that. I can add, each section allows you to modify the template, so I can add things and remove things and at will, which is really nice. I'm mostly used to it, and it works great for us. So I know there are other great CRMs out there, but that one just works for everybody. I like its layout. So yeah, the CRM, Google. I use a lot of Google's tools because they connect, pretty much across the board. We back up a lot of our stuff in Google Drive. We share a lot of our documents. The team has access to our CRM, our Google Drive, and Rocket Print, Data Tree. Man, those are our big ones. I mean, our comps are normal, from Zillow and whatnot. Nothing really, no real secrets over here.
It's what is your day job? I just explained that so people know.
Yeah, so I'm a tugboat engineer, which essentially means I maintain the engines and the overall repairs of the boat. I work for a company. They're out of Newark, New Jersey. We mainly work New York Harbor, a little bit of Connecticut, up and down a little bit. So yeah, I work for 2 weeks. Now I'm 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So 2 weeks I'm on the boat, living on the boat, working on the boat. Then I come home, and I'm home for 2 weeks. Then I'm back on the boat, back and forth, back and forth.
And that's really interesting because a lot of people, I think most people really, when they're getting into land or any kind of endeavor like this, they're working a job and they have to balance, their activities throughout the day and when they do their work. But you sort of have it to an extreme. Like you're literally, like you probably don't even have a signal out there, right? Like can you communicate at all? Like what are you able to do when you're out to sea versus back at home?
So the company I'm with now, because we're in New York Harbor, it's a lot better. I've been with this company for about 2 years. Prior to that, I worked on an offshore tug, and yeah, we went up and down the coast, and that was really difficult because there would be days without cell service or internet service, and then depending on where we go, sometimes it was really spotty. I know that this job, when you ask about treading water, I treaded water a lot because I only had so much time available to do this job. And it was incredible. It is incredibly difficult to do on the boat. And I also, when I'm on the company I'm with now, I work 12 hours a day. I have 12 hours on, 12 hours off, but I'm still there. But the company I worked before, and tends to be the norm for that industry, you work 6 hours on, 6 hours off, 6 hours on, 6 hours off. And so sometimes you're 6 hours off when you would have time to do something else like land investing was midnight to 6 a.m. So how many calls you going to make at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning?
I guess you could try. It's not going to work very well.
Yeah. So yeah, there was a lot of struggle with that. And then I got this new company, and I'm in the harbor, and I kind of make my own schedule a little bit. So I have a bit more flexibility. But when I was on my own, it was still, I didn't have time to make my calls until 6, 7 o'clock at night, which worked to some extent because most of the property we were buying was a few hours behind us. But now that I have the team, I'm just kind of answering emails and answering text messages and questions from the team throughout the day. So it's really worked out. But yeah, and then I come home and I just like sit at the desk and do as much possible work as I can. It really is the hardest part, is like when you're gone, then you come home and you have a month's worth of work to do between land and family and personal in a 2-week period. So, yeah.
If your job situation hadn't changed where you were in New York Harbor, do you think, like, did that have a huge contribution to your ability to sort of level up and get further? Or is it, in hindsight, like you probably could have done the same thing if you just knew how to manage your time and find the right help? Like, what do you think about that?
I think it would have happened a lot slower. I mean, assuming if I had the team at that time, they would have to sometimes wait for me to get back to them. Yeah. And sometimes it'd be days, which was sucked. But yeah.
Would you have any words of advice for a newer real estate investor or somebody who's eyeballing land? Like, maybe I should try that, maybe not. Or maybe they've tried it a little bit and things haven't really happened that quickly. Maybe they've done a deal or two, maybe none. I don't know, just given I feel like you've got just sort of a cool story because it's not super flashy for the first 5 years. Like it's
Yeah.
Maybe boring for lack of a better word. It's just, and that was a lot of my story too. And I think when you do finally come across a huge deal that pumps a bunch of money in your bank account, things start to change a little bit because now you've got money. All right, I talk to people occasionally who, they've done their first mail campaign and it just flops. And by the way, I also appreciate you just mentioning that happens to you sometimes, and we don't know why. It's like, it's really frustrating, and we want answers, but like, it happens to the best of us, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean the whole thing doesn't work. But I don't know, do you have any advice for people like that, or just thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah. So after I went through the coaching, and now that things have been really looking up for us, I started looking back. I'm like, wow, I've obviously come quite a ways since then. And I realized that, so I didn't have a great coaching or a great course experience initially. So now
you did not take our course, correct?
No, absolutely not. I did not. I always recommend your course. I didn't take another course after that. If I were to take another course, it would be yours. I realized, I started thinking, if I could do this all over again, how would I do it, right? So you have to look into it enough on your own to decide whether or not you want to spend the money on a course. Let's say a course is $1,500, although I think yours is a little less than that. So you get your course, you're committed, you're doing it, you spend a little bit of time getting some deals under your belt, getting some experience, and as soon as you feel confident, I think you should get a coach. A coach is a bit more expensive, obviously. You're talking, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. But if you get a coach to help you scale, then I think it's going to be different for everybody. But I started looking at it like this. You've got $1,500 into a course, and you got $6,000 into a coaching program. Your invested education is less than $10,000. By the time you've gone through the coaching program and things start scaling up, I see no reason, if you're committed to doing it and you have the time to put towards it, I see no reason you can't do $100,000 in gross sales. I mean, I went into this year like, all right, we're going to try to hit $100,000. In all honesty, we did that in the first like 5 months. And we're on track to do like 325, I think, or three something in gross sales this year. But I realized if you got a college education for $80,000 and you came out, be lucky if you were making that kind of money, you know? So I think my formula at this point is decide you want to do it, get the course. As soon as you get some experience and a little bit of, a few deals under your belt, get a coach to help you scale. Do that again. Get some more experience, some more deals under your belt, and then coach again. Like each time you're building a foundation to another level. But I can't undervalue how important an education is at this point. And I really think that's part of the reason I was treading water for so long is I felt bitter at the time about spending money on a course because it didn't pan out for me the first time. And at this point, I mean, when I went through that coaching, I mean, everything just skyrocketed after that. And I'm hoping to get a coach again to get my company up to $1 million in gross sales as soon as 2023, probably. So probably next year I'll get another coach to help me build that foundation for the next level for $1 million company. Mm-hmm. You got to build your foundations. That's how you build an empire, right? One level at a time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it is interesting. It's comparing coaches and courses and all this stuff. Like, it's definitely not an apples to apples thing. Like, just to say I have a course or a coach, it's like sometimes that's a huge instrumental life-changing thing, and sometimes it's just a waste of money. And it's frustrating because, like, how is a person to know that on the front end? How do you know? I don't know. It just I mean I know a lot and you know a lot because we've sort of seen a lot of stuff, but the average person on the outside, it's like, I don't know. Just I wish there was a more transparent way for everybody to understand, like, who are you best suited to go with and why.
Well, I want to offer some advice to that because actually right before this call, somebody was asking me when I was looking for a coach and I was asking the community, the best advice I got was find a coach that's actively doing what you want to be doing. You don't want somebody who isn't walking the talk. Mm-hmm. So you got to decide what you want, and you have to find the coach that is actively doing that. And I think that's the best advice I can give anybody when you're trying to find, obviously, a course also, but importantly, a coach.
So something that we do when we have time, and you don't have to go, and I don't have to go, so I'm going to do it, is ask 3 final questions just to ask our guest a little bit more about how they tick and, that kind of thing. So first question is, what is your biggest fear?
So I've thought about this. I think it's one of those things that changes as you age and mature. Mm-hmm. When I was younger, my biggest fear was being buried alive. These days,
that's logical. It could happen. You never know.
Yeah, it's still a pretty big fear of mine. These days, honestly, failure is my biggest fear. And I think a lot of people use failure to not do something. And at this point, I'm using the fear of failure to keep me from failing, if that makes any sense. Like, I can't quit or back down at this point. One, I've come too far. And 2, this is what I want to be doing. I don't really have much of a backup plan beyond this. So I am refusing to fail. And the fear of quitting and failing, I have to use it to my benefit,
Yeah. I think that is something that kind of separates the men from the boys or the women from the girls or however you want to say it, is that almost sort of like this no backup plan thing. And it seems counterintuitive because on one hand, a backup plan is just wise to have. But on the other hand, it's like you give yourself an out when you have something else you can fall back on. And when when you've really committed to something, it's like this must work, like at all costs. It just seems much more likely that you actually are going to succeed at that because you don't have a easy out or even a difficult out. Like if there's no out, you have to stick to the track. So, yeah. So like on failure, because that's a tricky thing, and I've heard many people say that when asking this question, just this idea that failure is just a really bad thing. So when you say that, are you talking about like failing at the land business and quitting, or do you mean like failing at a direct mail campaign, for example? Like, how do you define failure?
Oh, I'm sure I'm going to fail at direct mail campaigns. That it just keeps happening. It happens. I think failure at, I mean, I guess a bit more personal, but failing at providing for my family. I actually kind of had this conversation with my wife the other day. It was like, my wife and I, we come from different parts of, walks of life, but one thing about us is we've always managed to get by. So even though I'm afraid to fail, I really at providing for my family, I've never not provided for my family. Mm-hmm. And my wife and I are not those people. Even if I fail, we'll always, we're always going to have food in our stomach. I don't care what I got to do for it. Obviously I want it to be legit. But yeah, it's really that. I have these goals in mind, in a certain style that I want to live my life. And I think I'd be disappointed if I didn't get to that. But I know for a fact I'll always make sure my family is fed. So
it almost seems like maybe the crux of the issue with failure is that ultimately what it boils down to is shame. Like if you fail to provide, like you are a sorry excuse for a man or a husband. It's just
yeah.
No, it's and shame is.
I don't want to say that necessarily because
I guess I'm putting words in your mouth. Sorry. But like when I look at myself, like that's kind of what's behind the fear of failure is shame.
Yeah.
I understand the fear of that and wanting to get away from it for sure. So what's something that you are most proud of?
This has kind of always been my go-to answer, but it's never really changed. My independence, honestly, once I learned to provide for myself, it was a proud moment, and I still continue to do it. I've certainly gotten help along the way. Life is hard, man. I don't know how people get through it without any help. I'm not going to say I'm totally self-made, I mean, nobody's handed me handfuls of money, but I have always found a way to survive on my own, for the most part. And yeah, I mean, I'm happy with my life and my independence.
Yeah.
And
so when you say independence, you mean financial independence, like from your parents, or like from? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but that's when it started. Yeah. Once I was out on my own and away from my parents, and I have had to borrow money from them occasionally. So I can't say it hasn't been, totally on my own. Every now and then, like I said, we need help, but for the most part, yeah, man, I'm making my way.
Yeah. So this is a question that was not, I didn't tell you about this ahead of time or anything, but
that's okay.
I was asking my family about this over the weekend. It's really interesting. Question was, what was the moment at which you realized you were an adult and you were no longer a child? Like, what was the light bulb moment?
That's funny you asked that because I've thought this for a long time. I've always thought of myself as a child, and I was like, when I have a child of my own, that's when I'll be an adult. And I don't know, man. I've had that kid for like 6 years, and I still feel like a 41-year-old boy. I don't know. I mean,
Maybe you're not there
I
yet.
don't know when I'll feel like an adult. I'm doing all the adult things, but I feel like I'm still a kid. Maybe it's because there's just so much to learn, and there's so much more I still have to do. I mean, I'm maybe at my halfway point in life, so there's a long ways to go. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know um, I hadn't heard that response from anybody. That's kind of interesting. But in some ways, I kind of get that. Like, I sort of see myself as a child too, in some respects. Like, there's some things that like I still feel incapable of doing, and that I'm still afraid of. And in some ways, I'm still just childish at heart. Like, I don't really take it too seriously. Um, but I think for me, the moment when I realized I was an adult, I think I was like 25 or 26, and I saw people in my workplace that I was really intimidated by because they were like
Hmm.
way better in what, in my mind, they were like way above me, and I was this lowly little peon. And I started really paying attention to them. And eventually I started noticing that they would do things that, like, objectively were very minor league, like kindergarten level mistakes. Like that was really dumb mistake. Like, I didn't say that, but I thought that. Like, I can't believe they just did that, or they don't know this, or they messed that up. And it kind of clicked, like, there's actually things that I'm better at than them, and they're way above me.
Yeah.
And it just was this. It's not that I thought I was better than them or anything, but it just made me realize, like, I deserve a spot at the table. Like, I'm not this nobody. There are things that I can do better than anybody else here, and therefore I'm an adult. but but other people in my family that I was asking, like, their answers usually came back to some sort of traumatic event in life, like they experienced a big hardship, or like it was a sudden realization that the world is cruel, and like nobody's gonna hand things to you. Like, you got to work hard. And it's just kind of an interesting trend I saw, that usually it was tied to some kind of negative event, or hurt or something like that. So, but I guess you haven't had that yet because you're still a kid, right?
No, I mean, yeah, pretty much. No, I mean, I think we all have our trials and tribulations, but I don't know. I'm pretending, man. I'm just gonna keep faking my way through.
Seems to be working for you.
Yeah.
So, final question: what is the most important lesson you have ever learned?
I really struggled with this question. It's cliche to say, but the best I came up with was to start now. I think no matter what you do in life, and I've kind of always, I shouldn't say I always thought that, but it made sense when I first heard it, and I will hold to it. If you start now, it's something that you're really passionate about, you'll be further ahead tomorrow than you were the day before. And I think the other thing is to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. I think that's why my team has been doing so great, is because I've put the smarter people behind me, or not really, well, whatever, but I've added the smartest people I could find to my team. We have a great bookkeeper, we have a great tax strategist company, we have great title companies, we have a great acquisitions manager, great marketing manager. I mean, these people are doing jobs that I, one, don't want to do, two, don't want to learn, and three, I probably couldn't learn if I wanted to. I mean, yeah, it's just, some people are naturally better at other things, and you might as well put the best people you can in those positions.
Actually, that brings another question up. Sorry, I guess that wasn't the last question.
Yeah.
I've heard it said that even when you're not planning to do a job yourself, it's still important for you to do it at least once, or like just experience it, because then you know how to hold that person accountable. But you make a point though, because like my CPA, for example, like I'm not going to become a CPA so I can hold him accountable. Like, I'm just going to, so I wonder, where do you draw that line between I have to do this and experience it myself before I can outsource for it, versus like, I don't even want to know how it works, I'm just going to pay somebody and trust them?
So I have a couple answers to that. I think it depends on what position you're trying to fill. with the team, I mean, at my business, how do I answer this? So I knew at before I brought the team on, obviously I knew kind of all aspects of my business. And the company was at like an entry level type level. And so I knew enough to teach my acquisitions manager the direction to go and say, this is how we do things, here, here, and here. But as the company grew and as her position grew, she needed to learn things on her own and things I don't have time for. And there's often times where I'll find like a new website or, an article or a video, and I'll just be like, oh, this is something that she might be interested in and might help her. I'm not going to learn it all to teach her. Here's the information, teach yourself. The other thing is, I actually learned this a while back. When I saw like a documentary or something about Steve Jobs. He didn't know how to build an iPhone, or maybe he did, but he knew what the customer wanted and he knew who to go to give the customer what he wanted. He didn't understand every single aspect of his business, but he knew who did. And that's where I kind of look and say, I don't need to know that part. I just need to know how to source that information from the right person. So it kind of comes along with that. It's like finding the smarter person and putting them in that position, even though you don't know anything or everything about that position, like the bookkeeping or the tax strategist. Like when I talk to those tax strategists and they're like, oh, we comb through the tax code. Like, you think I'm going to be doing that? Absolutely not. But they're passionate about it, and I trust them. And another thing was like when I hired the bookkeeper, and we were talking about when I first hired her, I was like, look, I want to be completely hands off. I don't even want to do this stuff. She's like, you really have to learn some of this so you know that I'm doing a good job. So there is like different aspects of that where you should know some things so that you can make sure that those people are at least doing their job.
Yeah,
it depends. There's kind of 3 levels of it,
Yeah, for sure. Cool, man. Well, Jesse, I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking with me, and I've learned a ton. I'm sure a lot of people out there have as well. If people want to get a hold of you, or I don't know, you don't have to share anything, but if you want to, do you have a website, or how would they do that?
That's fine. Yeah, I think the best way to reach me is either through Facebook Messenger, Jesse Marchand on Facebook, although there's like 5 of me because of Facebook accounts.
Good luck finding them.
And marketing and all that. No, I mean, they're all mine. But no, I do have a main one. Most people know it. So, and email at earthlyacres@gmail. That's our company, Earthly Acres. And I want to thank you, Seth, since I have you here.
Yeah.
You definitely did pave the road for me, and I know you paved the road for a lot of people, and I have always appreciated how much you put out there to the community. And not to raise you up or anything, but I do try to kind of run my business that same way and be as generous as I can to other people.
That's awesome, man. Appreciate that very much.
Because I love your passion for helping people out. And I want to add one more thing, if you don't mind.
Yeah, good.
I also really want to tell people how much I really love this community of land investors. If you're, just coming into this industry, these people are amazing. Because the niche is small and we're able to spread our wings all across the country, there's like no competition. There's some, but not really. And everybody is so generous and helpful. And I really couldn't have gotten here without this community. I ask people questions all the time and they come to me and I just try to pay it forward because these people are amazing. And no, I don't think I've ever met, somebody that hasn't been willing to answer some questions or help you out. Like, we're all here kicking butt together. We're all happy to help each other, man. I love it.
That's really great to hear, man.
So thank you to you and the community.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words. And I would got to say the same thing about the community. And honestly, like, I think you're a big part of that, Jesse. People like you who are
Thank you.
always willing to jump in and answer people's questions in like an honest, truthful, like, with a heart that is to help. It's not a heart to like elevate yourself or make yourself sound smarter or better or like turn somebody off from the business. There's other communities out there that are almost like hostile in some ways. It's really weird. Like, I'm scared.
Yeah, that's part of the reason I didn't do the house flipping thing. It was pretty cutthroat.
Yeah,
man.
I know. I've noticed that same thing. It's weird. I don't get what's going on, but maybe it's just more competition or something, or maybe just more.
It's territorial, honestly. Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a really cool thing, and
yeah,
I remember we started the Facebook group a few 2 or 3 years ago now, and it was kind of just. I mean, I'd meant to do it, but it wasn't like, I never thought it'd be a serious thing. It's just like, okay, check this box. But like, people have just kind of flooded into it. And it's been just awesome to see the real, genuine conversations that happen there. And yeah, I love it.
It's a great resource, man. It really is. Yep. It's awesome. I love it.
Well, I'm going to have show notes for this episode, a lot of links to the stuff we talked about at retipster.com/119, because this is episode 119. And, or this is episode 119. retipster.com/119, because this is episode 119. But again, Jesse, thanks a lot for everything you do, for your contributions, for just being a good presence in the community, and for sharing so much today. I wish you all the best, and I'd love to talk to you again sometime. Just be cool to hear when you do finally hire somebody who's horrible, what differentiates that from the great people you've hired? I'm sure your day's coming.
We'll find out.
Cool, man. Thanks again.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.